my name's Dan, and I'm building a modular Azure-first .NET SaaS framework called SaaScore.net. In this video, I wanted to showcase the feature gating and feature usage tracking that's currently available in SaaScore.net, but more importantly, why this matters and how this could be used in real SaaS apps. So let's talk about the problem first of all. So, sometimes feature access logic can be, ends up everywhere. You've got, if plan equals this, or if admin is this. Feature flags are scattered all across the code base. It can work early on, but as soon as you want to start scaling or anything like that, it can become painful later on. You can then, on top of that, add multi-tenancy, per-tenant overrides, usage-based billing. It becomes a real pain to deal with, and most teams retrofit this too late. People don't design for this up front. They're forced to do it later. And I think that this goes back into one of the points that I made in the previous video, which I didn't explain myself very well. You can get people, if you don't do this stuff early on, you get your idea out there validating, but people are using it for free and stuff. And I think that's probably the wrong way to look at this. I think what's more appropriate is that, the pain and effort that it's going to take to retrofit that later on, just for what is considered foundational SaaS features. So that's how I think that this should be posed. The problem that this is solving is, all to do with usage of your features and how you can build them. Okay, so what I'm going to show you today is feature gating per tenant, and also the usage tracking tied to that, and how SaaScore.net approaches this problem. So let me just get my code up. Okay, so I'm not going to explain the app structure again. You've seen that, multiple times now. What I will say is that I have added how you would define your app features. You've got some sort of enum that just say, oh, this is my feature here, which is separate from the SaaS core platform features. So I've got two endpoints here. We've got a health endpoint and a feature endpoint. These are just gets. These are, dummy endpoints. They could be doing anything. We've got this extension method here, RequireFeature, which is if this feature is not enabled on this tenant, then this endpoint will not run. You will get a 403 at the moment. And then TrackRequiredFeature is they require the feature to be enabled and we want to track its usage, which is just basically a sort of wrapper of RequireFeature and track feature usage. Yeah, so I've offered it up in 3 extensions, so you can use them as you wish. But we've got track feature usage, we've got TrackRequiredFeature, and then RequireFeature. So the usage side can be, billable items, it could be quotas, it could be analytics, it could be, a whole multitude of things. And you get to decide what you want to do and how you want to enforce that in your application. So let me just start up the API here. There we go. So you may have remembered from last time, this is just a dummy login kind of. I mean, it actually calls the database, but this is not obviously, it's just set some cookies. So we log in, we've got our root tenant and we're the root admin. So if we go to the health endpoint, before we do that, let me just double check. So we've got TrackRequiredFeature and RequireFeature. So RequireFeature, we're not tracking any usage of. And then the feature endpoint, we are both requiring that you have it enabled and that we track it. So try this out. We get a 200 because this tenant has that feature enabled. And just before I go and show you this, I will show this, we don't have any feature usages so far. So we've called that endpoint, it's been successful, and it's been sort of authorized to do so from a tenant level entitlement. Now, feature level, the feature has been accessed successfully. So now if we go back to this, we can see that we've got a record in here saying that this tenant ID has accessed this feature on this date. Yeah. You may be wondering why there's only 4 columns in here. I will add more in a later auditing sort of push, but for now, this is what I need just to demonstrate the intent behind this. And the auditing thing will be more about like the request context, you know, which user specifically done this, and you know, where they did it from, etc. Which also matters in terms of from the last episode, the admin dashboard, because obviously admins would be able to support your users, and they could be acting upon their tenants. So we need to know more about the auditing side of that. But that's again separate. Okay, so for this demonstration, I've also added a demo tenant, and that demo tenant has a demo user. So we go there, we can log in. So we've got we're in the demo tenant, and we are the demo user. So what we can do now is if we access this health one, again, status okay. Let's just go and check the database real quick. So again, only the one usage from earlier by the root tenant. And then if we go to the feature and we execute that, we get 403. Now, I'm probably going to change this to a 402, which is like payment required. I'm not just for better UX, but for demonstration purposes, I think this is fine. The reason for this 403 is that if we go to the database and then we go select all from tenant features, you can see this bottom one, it's not enabled. Now what this is showing is if a tenant could switch plans, say they're on a premium plan and they switch down to like a free plan, we can just go and disable those features. Or certain plans have features enabled, just by default. We can do that. We can enable per tenant if we want to increase or allow them to use certain features before maybe they're ready. So that's what that is sort of dealing with here. We're just going to enable this feature for this tenant, and let's just double check that that is in there. So now this tenant has that feature. We go back to the usages. Again, we've only got the one usage. So let's go back here. Let's execute this again. We get the feature accessed now. And if we go back here, we get that tenant usage in there as well. So this is really demonstrating tenant isolation, and because we've got the 2 tenants acting upon them, and it's successfully chosen the right tenant. I'll explain that in a second. And then obviously the tenant feature associated with that we've got. So what I was just meaning was that we get the tenant ID out of a trusted source. In this case, it's the cookie. And that tenant ID is used throughout the entire call chain from that point onwards. It's set, and in the API, it's not mutated or anything. Obviously, with the admin dashboard that I showed yesterday, that could be changed, but obviously that's not the intent for the normal API. So this is enforced. This tenant isolation is enforced both at the query filter stage on the database context, but it's also enforced at the specification level. The reason that I've done that is because if this is the foundation, and this is something that SaaS Core is offering up, this is so core to how SaaS applications work. It's real, to do with billing, it's with people's money. So it's like, if you can't mess this up, and this is why SaaS Core, out the box, we want this to be as simple to work with as possible, so that you can't go wrong with this. So yeah, let's go back. So one thing I do want to say about this, because I did obviously return a 403, this isn't auth. This isn't authentication. This isn't authorization. That's who you are and what you can do as an individual. This is system. This is tenant entitlement. This is what the tenant is paying for. And then you can layer authentication and authorization on top of that. More authorization by adding guards to user roles. This user can only look at billing or can only act upon billing side of things, features. This one can use, this genuine user can use, this feature, the main feature of my application, but we don't want them looking at the billing side because that's one of our billing users, or finance users. So yeah, I'll probably change that to 402, but anyway. So the important thing to take away from this is that this is back-end enforced. You can't manipulate the request to try and get around this. This is a system level thing. This is a middleware enforced on those endpoints, and really it's quite easy to use this with just those three extension methods. You can then add and guard and gate all your features and track everything that's being used just by three extension methods. So the same approach works for the APIs, worker services, background jobs, admin dashboard, scheduled tasks. The idea is that this is going to be, sort of lean on the auditing side of it as well. So we want to know who's done what and when, and it's going to all follow this same principle. It's not tied to any payment providers. It's not tied to any sort of pricing. This is foundational level SaaS infrastructure, which is going to sit side by side with billing. So the billing is going to decide how much they're paying for these things, and then it sits with this is how it's being used within our system. So in earlier videos, I sort of leaned, I think, more towards the mechanics of what I'm doing and not so much on the why. I feel like I've approached this better in this video where I'm explaining, okay, this is how it's working, but this is why it's here, and this is why it's working as it is. So hopefully I'll get better at explaining those sort of things as time goes on. Yes, so what's coming up next? I've kind of gleaned towards it fairly throughout this video because this sits so billing and feature tracking or feature gating. This sits side by side. I think the most logical thing for me to do is do the billing module next. That's going to have a whole host of database entities that I need to figure out as well. We're going to have webhooks because we're probably going to be using Stripe for the first one. But this can work with, the idea is that we're just going to register different payment providers. They're all the same thing. They're all doing the same sort of thing. They just work a bit differently. So that's what I'm going to be working on next. I know I was talking about authentication. I'm still not decided on an identity provider, and obviously I'm going to wait for yesterday's video to go out before I start, really locking down what I'm going to use. I've used quite a few providers in the past. I've got some favourites, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, if you've been bitten by feature tracking or gating in the past and you found this video interesting, please subscribe. Follow along the journey. We've had sign-ups now for the pre-release website, so if you want to go see that, sascore.net. All links are in the description below. And I'll see you next week. Cheers.